If you're looking for some good knives under $200, this is the list for you. Starting off here with the Shadow Daggers Gamma Doppler. Now this is the most unique one on the list because you can get all 4 phases of the Gamma Dopplers for the Shadow Daggers. Unfortunately, it is Shadow Daggers, but honestly speaking, having 4 different options of all the phases is absolutely wild at a price point of only $200. You're gonna end up with either a desirable finish or a desirable knife for only $200, and honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of the Shadow Daggers, but I think this is one that definitely could be having some appeal to a lot of people all across the board. SkinSwap is today's sponsor, and they're also sponsoring you with a free bonus for signing up with the first link in the description. They're the premier place for CSGO and Rust skins with a massive trading site and a top-of-the-line marketplace, offering you the most competitive rates out there and a massive 40% bonus when you're using that link in the description. Combine that with their top-of-the-line selling feature with many payout options and their trading feature legitimately taking you just about a minute, and there's no reason not to sign up with that first link in the description. Second up on the list is going to be the Huntsman knife Lore and field tested, coming in with a cash price of just under $195. This one is absolutely wild to me because when I think about the Lore finish, especially in the very good wares, it's extremely expensive, but you can go ahead and snag one of these maybe about 0.25, and honestly, it's not going to run you that much, which is really impressive considering when it's in a factory new format. I honestly think of it as a very high tier knife, especially for some of those more desirable knives. This is a Huntsman, so it's not the most desirable out there, but I definitely think it's one that seems a little bit more expensive than it actually is. Next up on our list, we're going to be having a split option. You're going to be having one of 2 knives on the same finish. That's going to be the Doppler finish on either the gut knife or the Navaja knife. Both of these are going to be pretty decent options, both of them a little bit cheaper, coming in at only about $187 for the Navaja and $177 for the gut knife. Now with that being said, you're not going to have the full luxury of what you just previously had with the Shadow Daggers Gamma Doppler, because for these ones, you're probably only going to be able to get a phase 4 like you've been seeing on screen, or a phase 3, what you're now going to be seeing on screen. Both of these are decent options at the end of the day, but it's not going to be that full luxury like you had previously. No, I think these are actually really good knives if you're looking for something that's a little bit on a starter end. These are going to be extremely liquid. We know what they're going to do in the future, and therefore I think they're probably going to be pretty decent pickups if you're looking for something that's not too complex, and if you want to get out of it at any time, you really can with these ones because they're so stable price-wise, because there's so many of them out there. The 4th knife on our list is going to be going to the Falchion Slaughter in a field-tested format, coming in at a price point of $198. Now I really like the Slaughter format. I think it's one of the best finishes out there that came from the older collection, and honestly, it started to get a little bit more cheap than I would expect. I honestly think of this as a little bit more of a high tier finish when I think about some of the older knives, but on the Falchion knife, it's coming in at less than $200, and the nice thing about the Falchion knife with the Slaughter is you're going to be getting it on the handle as well. Most knives, you just get the blade. The Falchion knife, a little bit unique, you get the whole knife of that finish, and therefore I think it's definitely a pretty decent looking knife for only $200. Number 5 on our list is going to be going to the Flip Knife Blue Steel and field tested, coming in at $196. Now I'll be completely honest, I really like the Flip Knife, and I don't really get why. It's not anything absolutely spectacular for most people, but I honestly see it on a very similar level to the bayonets out there. I think the Flip Knife looks awesome, and Blue Steel for me personally has always been one of my favorite finishes just because the simplistic look, and it doesn't look bad. It's extremely cheap for this finish, and usually they're looking pretty decent in my personal opinion. Next up on the list is going to be the Paracord Knife Crimson Web. Now honestly speaking, I think the Paracord knife is one that's kind of like the Blue Steel for me. I think it looks really good, and especially the Crimson Web finish, if you can find it with a low enough float for only $187, it's probably not going to be a bad pickup in my personal opinion. You do struggle with some of those liquidity issues because obviously it only comes from the Shadow Web and Fracture case, but I definitely think the Paracord is one that looks a little bit undervalued in the current moment, not necessarily from an investment point of view, but just from a looks point of view. I think it looks really good. After that, we're going to be doubling up once again. We're going to be looking at the Marble Fade finish, this time once again from the Navaja and the Gut Knife. Both of these are going to be coming in right around $160 to $170, which is extremely cheap when we're talking about a Marble Fade finish. Marble Fade, once again, one of the most desirable finishes out there that's not a Doppler in my current opinion. With that being said, I honestly don't think that the Navaja or the Gut Knife is obviously your go-to when it comes to a knife, but when we're talking about a finish that's going to be desirable and is going to continue to be desirable, the Marble Fade is exactly that. Everyone's looking for a Marble Fade. Marble Fades are known to be expensive, and when you think about them on a bayonet or a karambit, you're talking upwards of thousands of dollars, but for just around $150, $160, you can go ahead and grab a Marble Fade here. It's not going to be the most desirable knife, but I definitely think it's one that's going to seem at least a little bit more expensive than it already is, which is something you're looking for if you're also looking to try and accrue some value with your knife. After that, we're going to be looking at a Bowie Autotronic coming in minimal wear for only $193. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about the Autotronic, but honestly, I really like the Autotronic as a finish. The Bowie knife is not at the top of my list list, but when we're talking about knives, I think there's definitely ones that are significantly worse than the Bowie. Obviously, the Autotronic is one of the more desirable finishes, at least for me personally, coming in at minimal wear. It's going to look exactly how it feels, and that is pristine. It looks nice and clean, and I think it's got everything you want to have when we're talking about a knife finish. After that, we've got the Ursus knife Damascus steel coming in factory new for only $160. Now, the Damascus steel is probably not going to be your favorite finish, but it's probably not going to be your least favorite by a pretty significant margin. I don't think anyone is really hating on the Damascus steel. It looks nice, it looks clean. It's definitely not going to be your favorite, but the Ursus knife is a little bit of a unique one as well. You've got a wide blade, so you're going to be able to see that finish. So you want a finish that actually looks decent to you, and if you think the Damascus steel looks pretty decent, I honestly don't think this would be a decently bad pickup, especially considering I do like the Damascus steel. After that, we got our last double up, which is going to be the Tiger Tooth finishes, coming in on the Navaja and the Gut knife, coming in at $131 and $149 respectively. Now, honestly speaking, when we're talking about these double ups, it really comes down to if you can suffice with the knife. These are not going to be the most desirable knives, coming in at the Navaja and the Gut knife, two of the arguably worst knives inside of the game, with one of the best finishes. Your Tiger Tooth, your Marble Fade, your Doppler. These are the top three finishes, or at least ranking in your top three for most people. Therefore, it comes down to, can you suffice with the Navaja or the Gut knife? Honestly, I like the Gut knife a lot more than I like the Navaja. I think the Navaja is not very desirable, but the Gut knife is one that I definitely played with for a while, and maybe because I played the game for a while, but I think it looks significantly better than the Navaja. Number 14 on our top 10 is going to be going to the Skeleton Knife Forest DDPAT in a field-tested condition with a $200 price point. Now, honestly speaking, Forest DDPAT is not going to be at the top of anyone's list, but I think the Skeleton Knife is a cool, unique one. There's not really anyone like it out there, and therefore I definitely think it deserved a spot on this list if you could get it at any price point, but I don't think it's going to be for anyone specifically to pick them up unless they're a big fan of the Skeleton Knife. I think it's a cool knife, but it's not for everyone. And finally, number 15 is going to be going to the Talon Knife Boreal Forest Battle Scarred for just $200. Now, this might seem like an absolutely wild pick out of left field, but let me break it down. Basically, this is the only chance you're going to have at getting an actual really good knife from this list. The closest thing you're going to be finding to the Talon is maybe the flip knife in terms of the publicity it has around it. Talon knife is a very cool knife, but the problem is for just $200, you don't really have too many options. Therefore, you have to go with a battle scarred version or maybe a well-worn, and I went with the Boreal Forest. It was just a random pattern. It's mainly about having that Talon knife at a $200 price point. Now, I get a lot of people asking me about investments for knives, and you've seen the graphs throughout the video. You can see that the majority of them are not losing significant amount of value. In fact, most of them usually end up accruing a very slight amount of value over time. With that being said, there's a couple big things. First of all, don't just specifically buy a knife because it's going to be the best investment opportunity. Buy a knife that you actually care about if you're interested in playing the game. Second thing, you're going to be looking for a more desirable finish rather than a more desirable knife. We talk about the Talon Battle Scarred. Obviously, it's a very nice knife, but it's probably going to be outpaced by something that's a Tiger Tooth, a Doppler, or something that's a lot more desirable to a lot more people. These are the knives that usually end up accruing the most value because people want these knives, whereas not everyone is looking for a Boreal Forest Battle Scarred. That's pretty much all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day.